This video is brought to you by Amplified Parts. Amplified Parts has a massive inventory of guitar parts, tubes, speakers, kits, and more in stock and ready to ship the same day. Upgrade your gear. Shop now at amplifiedparts.com.
Hey everybody, this is Perry with Premier Guitar. We're coming up on 10 years of shooting the Rig Rundown with some of the world's most amazing guitar players, and I thought it would be really awesome to dig through our archives to find some of the coolest gear and stories for you guys. In this particular installment, we're going to take a look at some of the wackiest and weirdest vintage amps that we've seen on the Rig Rundown. I hope you enjoy this fun little history lesson.
Okay, Tyler, so next up we've got Brian's famous basement amps, which are the 6G6B circuit, which is a pretty rare one, right?
It is. We carry about 4 of them with us. Of course, we have a couple in the warehouse too, if we need to ship them out to do any TV or quick appearance type things. But they range from, I believe, 1961 to 63 era, and of course they're all brown face and all 6G6Bs, and credible amp. Everybody's in search of them these days.
Yeah, and the reason, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the big reasons why he likes it is because they have a solid-state rectifier.
They do, yeah. Yep. And it's some of the older tubes that he found back in the 80s. There was a company that was going out of business that had a big stock of AMS tubes, so he just purchased all of them. So that's basically what we run, and nobody else can really get that tone from those tubes because no one else has them. So,
okay, so what was that? What was the brand again?
It's AMS. I think that's part of the secret too. That it makes it really.
I haven't heard that before. That's cool. Yeah. Were they preamp tubes and power tubes?
Yep, preamp and power tubes. And I believe when he originally bought them, it was like 150 pre-mu tubes, and probably about 60 sets of matched output tubes. So
wow. And he's still running off the ones he bought in the 80s.
Yeah, I think it was the late 80s he found them or something. I forget the story. Someone told me. I've only been here 5 years, and some of the guys have been here 20 years. So I'm kind of the new guy,
But these still have AMS tubes in them.
They do, yes. And of course I have my bias probes and my tube testers and all that stuff. So I constantly keep up to date of keeping a records book of when I'm changing them. And I'm a firm believer of 60 hours for your output tubes and about 200 on the pre-tubes. So,
how often do you have to check those out?
Usually it's by tone, but I do keep track pretty well of how many shows we're doing and the time limit and stuff of the shows. And so, every 2 tours or something, I'll really, if they're month-long tours or something like that, I'll actually take them out and do a lot of the electric socket cleaning, get some of the carbon out of there and that type of stuff too. So I try to keep that really clean also.
What do you think he's going to do when he runs out of those AMS tubes?
I don't know. That's a good question. Won't be for probably about another 10 years, but hopefully by then we'll all be living in like an island somewhere.
Of course he has a backup back there, and I assume it's basically the same specs and everything. Does he use the exact same settings on that, or does he go through by ear and just set it by ear? Because obviously there are probably some resistors that are different values or different tolerances or different materials or something in the other head.
Yeah, I mean, it all goes by ear with him. I mean, we have a basic general setting that we start off things with, and usually before tours when we're doing rehearsals, we'll actually go through the amps one by one, and I take notes of what he's liking, in terms of each amp. A, B, C, D amps is basically how we list them. So, and of course this is the A amp in the front. Has a couple of his favorite his idols, Eddie Cochran on the left side here, and Gene Vincent on the other side over here on the right. There's both his favorite guys of all time. And
now, what about the speakers in these cabs?
They're actually, I think they're Celestion 30 watts that are in here, greenback, but they're old. They're vintage 30s, so they're not the new stuff. And there was, I think there's a couple too that actually had the Jensen speakers in them too at one point in time. I don't know if those were original or not either. I don't know what really actually came stocked in these when they came out. Something I should do some research on, I guess.
In amp land,
yep.
So tell me about this.
So this is a high watt custom 50, early 70s.
Oh, cool.
Probably the best sounding amp in my opinion.
Yeah.
Into a matchless 2x12. It just sounds so great. For a long time, I like to collect amps, but it wasn't until recently that I got into high watts, and I guess I just assumed they were like Marshalls or something, that they were just like overdrive. But what I didn't realize is that they're just like so clean.
Yeah,
so
really
loud.
clean, really
So
clean.
it's perfect with the pedals because they can get so much headroom. And like when you hit a fuzz, it actually gets really loud or something.
Yeah.
So I actually have two high watts. I have a 50 here in the 2x12, and then over here I have a 72 DR 100 watt
Oh, wow.
running into a 215 cabinet, an Earth 215.
Really?
And it just sounds great. It's
Wow,
perfect
that's
for
great.
what I want to do. And like the great tragedy of the whole thing is that I put them behind the drum riser because it's got to a point where it's like I want to hear everyone playing, and I just like my stuff loud. Not like crazy loud, but I like it kind of loud. And so when a room fills up with people, you kind of start losing the rest of the band when you have two high watts blasting.
Yeah.
So I put them behind the drum riser, and my awesome sound guys, Lowell and Colte, on a day off in Phoenix, made me these sweet baffles.
Nice.
So we baffle off the amps backstage, and they're really controlled. And it's actually nice too, because then Chris, the sound guy, can he uses these sweet Cascade ribbon mics, fathead ribbon mics on all of our guitar amps. He can actually put them in the house, which when they're on the stage pointing out, he'd only feather in the amps. You know?
Right.
So now he actually has kind of full control over the amps, which is great. That's the way it should be.
Yeah.
So as much as I'd love to have like two high watts on stage, like Pete, they're actually a little bit easier
Yeah.
for performance-wise in my ears to have them back here.
And that's going to be a great combination to have the open back 12
Yeah.
and then the 15 closed
Yeah,
back.
close back 15.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
it's great. And the 100 watt through that is just really clean and chimes. And then this is a little more rock and roll, depending on the venue or whatever I'm feeling.
Wow.
This one's jumped, so it's like you just go into the normal input, and the normal and the bright control it, so you can kind of like, have a little bit of bright, a little bit of normal,
Right.
kind of cascade into each other.
Yeah, that's cool. Are you nervous about traveling with, these are like 40-year-old amps.
Right.
I mean,
yeah,
is it-
well, actually, I actually have a ton of other amps too that I just sent out to the amp guy here in Nashville.
Oh, really?
So I had like my 70s Fender Bassman.
Yeah.
That's usually driving the Leslie that I sent out today in my AC30, my
Yeah.
British AC30.
Stuff breaks.
That's part of the thing, I mean,
Yeah.
that's part of the fun too. In a perfect world, I would know how to tech my own amps.
Yeah.
But I'm too scared to shock
Oh,
myself.
yeah.
But the high watts are great.
Yeah, that's great. So you run both these, and then over here is your Leslie.
Yeah, my Leslie, my Vibratone Leslie.
Okay, so this is like your last secret weapon.
Yeah, this is my favorite thing. This is just a Leslie, Fender Vibratone Leslie. I think this might be like early 70s when it moved to Leslie or what. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, this just has a 12-inch speaker with a rotating drum. You mic it up with those same Cascade ribbon mics on both sides.
Cool.
You can also mic the top. Some people mic the top.
Yeah.
And then I just have this Fender Princeton, one of the new Fender ones, 65. It's great. I mean, on its own, it's a great amp. I usually use it on the stage to monitor, but since the Bassman is in the shop, I'm going to use this to power it. But it's great. You don't need much gain into this because I just get it mostly in the monitors of the side fills.
Yeah.
And keep it kind of low, and just to hear that swirl on stage.
Yeah, that's great.
This is great. I keep it at 4.5 or 5. I can't use the reverb because the drums will shake the tank, so you'll hear the crash every time the drums do it.
Yeah.
But I just love it. It's such a great sound. I used it on the record. I used a real Leslie.
Oh, great.
And then I kind of got obsessed with finding something I could tour with, and then ever since I just kind of try to, if I see a Vibratone for a good price or something. But I love it. It's just kind of one of those things
That's great.
that it's nice to have the real thing sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
Like
Oh,
the
yeah.
pedals. A lot of people do really good jobs with the pedals, but just the way I am, I like to have like a real Leslie.
Yeah.
You know, it's potentially unreliable. This one actually, knock on wood, has been really great. But there's something about the excitement of hoping that it makes it for another show, another tour, you know?
Yeah.
And the Princeton is just, you know, heavy duty in its own little small, tiny way, you know?
Yeah.
It's great, it does the trick. Plenty of wattage for it to do this. And perfect size, looks cool right on top,
Yeah. It's perfect.
you know? The Bassman I have, the Bassman 50, has almost the same amount of age. So when you put it on top, it like matches the Leslie perfectly.
Yeah. That looks cool.
But yeah, I love it. It's just this on its own, or this powering this, is just really fun. And having that separate output on the board is a huge help, just to get that dry, really clear sound going into this thing.
Okay. So this is the famous snakeskin.
Correct. 1973 vintage, sort of predates a lot of the boogies that you'll see out there. But this is an original Mesa Boogie snakeskin amp. And
Did it come in the snakeskin originally?
yeah, this is it. This is it.
Wow.
This is the way it's looked forever. So,
Wow.
yeah, we had been using Mark I heads for a long time, and Carlos heard a video recording of himself playing a show at the Budokan in Japan in 1973, and says, "I need that sound." So we got these amps off of the shelf, and here you go.
Wow. How great.
They were not without their problems at the very beginning, but these since have settled all that down, thanks to Mike Bendinelli at Mesa Boogie. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah. After 40 years, they're
That's
really
right.
dialed in. Yeah,
That's right.
41
yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Right.
So anyway, it's a single 12. It's got an Altec 417.8 in it, and it's got a preamp boost built into it, and it screams. It just sounds really great. Mesa's, as I said before, they've reissued this amp with Carlos's input. It's now called a King Snake. It sounds the same as this amp. It's very workable, and in addition, it also has some other features that keep it more current for players today. So it's a good deal.
It's great, and this has, although it's a very old amp, it already has the switch from wattage from 100 to 60.
Correct, yeah.
And you're running looks like four 6L6s.
4 6L6s, yeah.
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 And did it come with the Altec speaker?
Yes, I believe that's what they were putting in them back in the day.
Cool.
And I've had a stash of them sitting around our warehouse from when we used to use the Altecs.
Yeah.
We had switched to hemp cone JBLs maybe 10 years ago. And so I put these Altecs back in, and they're the deal.
That's
they're
great.
Pretty cool, yeah.
And you run that speaker and this PRS cabinet?
Yeah, and that amp selector allows us to choose either the Bluto tone head or the Dumble head, feeding a single 4x12. And then on the second channel, the same thing, a Bluto tone or a Dumble head, feeding the other 4x12 on stage.
And so these are not backups. You're running actually.
Switching between the two, yes, correct.
Wow.
During the show, depending on the song, depending on the venue. Sometimes it's all up to the player. It's not, and I don't do any of the switching of amps back here. That's all out on stage.
No.
So
How loud is it?
it's pretty darn loud. It can be, although I will tell you that a lot of times we'll go in to do a TV show or something like that, and I'll go out and I'll send the loudest signal that's going to be sent, and everybody in the room, to the audio guy, and everybody in the room is like, "Oh my God, we're going to suffer. It's going to be horrible, right?" And I have to tell him, I said, "Well, you got to understand, I'm playing louder than Carlos will play," and I say, "Here's how he will play." Because he's manipulating the tone or the volume control on the guitar.
Yeah.
So he'll be turning that down a lot. He's very rarely full out on that instrument.
Right.
Okay, because he's trying to blend his guitar into the stage, into the room, into what he's hearing. And so
Yeah, and a very dynamic player. That's a big part of his
That's right. That's
thing.
right. So when you start backing the volume on the guitar down, it becomes not so loud. And another thing about it is it sounds good. It's not tearing your head off with high end. And so you can almost get away with a little more volume, and you're not really causing people pain.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I wonder if there's anybody else in the world that travels with 2 dumbbells.
I don't know. Probably. Probably. You know, I think, doesn't Ben Harper have a couple? John Mayer, maybe? People like that? I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
Larry
that's,
Carlton, I think he's a dumbbell guy.
Yeah, but 2 of them traveling.
Right. Maybe you got to have a spare, man.
Well, these are beautiful. Well,
Do you want to talk about your amps?
No. I don't know.
Come on, please.
Oh, these Fuchs. I thought that was a K when I bought it. It was really,
That's the only reason.
yeah. And then these are deluxe reverbs that I have in here. I have the guts in here, and these were made by Paul Rivera, actually. If you look at it, it has a fat and thin switch on it with a heavier duty transform in it and a master volume, which the normal deluxes didn't have. And they put a bigger speaker in. I used to use the bigger speaker, but now I have an ISO box that's back over in there with a microphone in it, and it gets consistent sound.
Now, do you
I
know
get a
if,
consistent sound there, and then I also mic up here with the just more 12s, so I get a punchier sound out here, and then I get the other sound that I've had since 77.
the deluxe reverbs?
Deluxe. I had 6 of them made for me.
Now, Paul Rivera designed deluxe reverb 2s for Fender in the early 80s. Is that the circuit that you're using?
I don't know. It was because I had it made before he did it. He did them as for musicians, for like studio guys, basically. And I heard one. I said, I gotta have one. And I said, well, I better have 2. I better have 6. So I had 6 made for me.
How much of the sound you get out of the deluxe is it mostly for a clean sound or sort of early breakup?
It's just it's the tone I like. I don't use any pedals. I have a wah pedal, but I don't really use any pedals. So it's like, I get all the harmonics and this and that and the feedback and the sustain. That's all real.
So a lot of people like a deluxe reverb for a clean sound, but you're getting some of your grit from that too.
That's why I've got the master volume. So it's like I can get a good sound at a low volume or a high volume. It's like it sings.
And you've always got the Fuchs amps on too.
Yeah, with the Fuchs that I use for punches the front here out of the Gibson cabinets, and I've had extra stuff, but we have so much gear. This is what we've got out here right now.
Back on the Fuchs a little bit.
They were nice to me. They actually made they copied the heads to match my speaker cabinets that Gibson actually made for me. So I've got, because I started up getting those, I think they're called Blues something, or Blues Magoos, I don't know what they're called, something blue something. And because I liked it was 212, and that's what this is. And then I said, well, I like them, but I want them to be checkerboard. So they always freak out when I walk in the building, but they made it. And I actually had the Gibson heads, but I liked what I've got here.
What drew you to Fuchs amps in the first place?
They called me up. And I think one of the guys that worked for me years ago said, "Hey, you got to try these out." And so I tried it out, because I've got Marshalls, I got this, I got that, I got Sound City, I've got 65, I got some of those. They made checkerboard stuff for me. I've got a lot of amps, so it's like I'm not running out yet.
I'm glad you mentioned the Sound City, because we Facebooked before we came out to say, what do you guys want us to ask Rick Nielsen and the guys? Yeah, they wanted to know if you still had those.
Yeah, I bought them. I couldn't afford Marshalls at the time, so I bought 8, or let's see, I think about 4 or 6 stacks of Sound City, because I could get the same amount, head, 2 bottoms. I could get 2 for the price of 1. And that was in '68. I bought them in England and had them shipped over, and I've still got them all. I don't use. I think the heads are mostly gone, but the cabinets I still have those. Actually, some of those are at Rick's Picks. Some of those are just in our warehouse.
All right, so Joe is not afraid to bring a lot of amps with him on tour. So let's start at this end of his amp on walk down. Just tell us a little bit about what the amps are and how we use them each night.
Okay. First off, there's 20 feet of amps here, so we got a lot of amps to cover. And they're all on. People always ask me, they go, well, what does he use and what's for show? This is all used, which is part of the battle. What we have here is we have 2 plexis. We have 2 Marshall plexis. One's a 69, one's a 70. The 69 plexi has the KT66s in them, and the 70 has the EL34s. I'm not sure, I can't remember which one's which, but I listen to them both each day and determine which one I want to use as his main sound. The other one's his backup. Okay. These are just standard Marshall speakers. These are 30s. I like to have it, like I said, we're all about clean. We have no master volumes. It's all clean. We just like to turn it up to where it just starts to break up, and we let the pedals do the rest and the guitars. That's why every guitar he has sounds completely different, and that's by design, because it allows us to really, he knows when he wants to strat, he knows what it's going to sound like. He doesn't have to worry about what pedals are on or what amps Okay, and then over here, I'll start with here. This is JTM 45. This is the reissues. Okay, these have the EL 34s in them as well. And this is, I have 3 of those. This is my main one. I have 2 backups. And this is also, let's see what's the best way to put it, a homemade, custom-built siren that sounds like you're getting pulled over by the police. It's amazing. And he loves to use it, and it's got its own 50-watt amp. And it comes through this cabinet here. Okay. And this is also his cabinet if the whole rig goes down. I have a thing in the back where I plug them straight in, and this will run the whole show until I've corrected whatever the problem is. Up above this, we have Jet City. These are EL84s in the Jet City. This is the Jet City 20. This is a 20-watt amp. This is actually powering his talk box right now. This is the 1974 Joe Perry bag with his talk box in there. The old...
Same bag.
Same bag.
Yeah.
Same amazing bag. This here, Joe says, is one of the best sounding talk box amps. In the studio we use this for everything, but out here it just really works for that talk box. It sounds so good, and he's able to get the drive and the clarity out of it that he needs. Okay, moving over here. This is the backup Plexi. We've already talked about that. This right here these are 25 watts, okay? These are just original 25 watt Celestians. This is a little bit more gritty. I want a little bit more breakup out of that, okay? This is, if you don't see a microphone in front of it, it's on, but what it is it's for his stage sound. This whole thing fills up this whole world, this whole side of the stage. We don't obviously mic everything. We've got 12 different cabinets. You don't need 12 different microphones going everywhere. It's just kind of silly. So what we do is we pick and choose what sounds really good for certain things. Okay, so this right here, this speaker here, and the speaker on the other side of the Marshall heads, those are actually 215s in that cabinet over there, all right? And both these two are pushed by the Marshall Majors, the 200-watt KT88 tube-driven Marshall Majors.
And what year are these?
These are like 1970, I want to say. Those things are loud and proud. And we tried to talk box with one of those once, and it was the most amazing thing. I thought we were going to blow fillings out of his head. It was so loud. That tube just come flying out of his head. It's amazing. Up here behind his American flag, we have a 65 Blues Breaker. Okay, this is amazing. This is EL34s as well. No, I'm sorry, this is the 5881s. Oh, yeah. And this has 410s. So it's very top and very just, if he's not getting cut, that'll do it. This is where it goes. We pop this baby in there, and he's got enough cut to take his head off. Okay, so there's a pedal that goes with the Marshall Major. What I do is we try to get a little bit more of 125 and a little bit more of like 1K out of it, because it's a little dark. So you have to get it really loud to make it kind of more crisp, and we can't get that loud. So I use this, and it kind of gives me that extra.
So I'm guessing, if I may guess, this is an older PV head?
Yes.
Do you know what year?
I believe the circuit board says 71 or 72.
How long have you had it?
Well, just to start off, so that people who think they got to spend a lot of money on gear to get a rig, when I got this stuff initially, the sum total of all the gear on this stage, not including the basses, was about $300.
$300.
This head was $125. It is the sound of our band. I have only ever seen 2 other than this one. And if anyone has one and they'd like to sell it to me, I'll pay pretty much anything for these. So this is the sound of the band. This is the sound of my bass, is these amps. I don't use distortion pedals, it's just the amp distortion. And the way the distortion works on this is almost like, it's not like distortion is being added, it's almost more like you're overdriving a compressor.
Okay.
It's just the square wave action happens. That's why some people are like, why you don't? There's almost no feedback unless you want it to be there. It's because it's this very controlled, insanely loud sound.
So what? Can you tell me the model?
It's called a Super Festival 800.
Okay.
This is the B for bass, and there was also a G for guitar, which had a couple other, couple slightly different controls, like a fuzz as opposed to just
the overdrive.
I've never had to turn it up past 1.5. It doesn't matter where I've been. It doesn't matter stage size. At 1.5, I can drown out anything. I have driven. The most I drove 3 Ampeg 810 cabs with it one time, and I was still at the same volume. Actually, like we were playing Reading and Leeds. I think it was in Reading. There was all these SVT cabs that had been backlined.
Right.
But with a 1/4-inch connection, you could chain them up. So I'm like, hey, do you guys mind if I just for fun plug? I had one, and then there was 2 more. This is before I could afford to bring my cabinets with me. And we just chained them all together, and I actually had 4 Marshall 412s being driven by this guy. So this is, you can't really talk about one without the other. So
Sure.
This is an acoustic 450B. I'm not really sure. I've read different things. I read that it was 600 watts you would think that the 450 would be telling you something.
Right.
Same thing, and though it's got a distortion in it, and that's it. The distortion on both of these is cranked, and that's just what it sounds like. This one is more top and mid.
Okay.
This is doing it as well, but the mid on this it sounds more like Fender guitar mid, and this is more like Gibson guitar mid, if that
makes
sense.
sense.
You know what I mean? There's just like a slightly different curve and tone to it, but the two together one by itself doesn't sound right. I gotta have the two.
And what kind of cabinets are you running?
This is the funniest thing. So these cabinets are made by a company in Canada called Trainer that exists now, but I think these are both 71s. I have 2 more at home. And the only original speaker is this one. I tried to replace them. I had a stagehands years ago dropped one on its back, and the whole thing was gone. This is the only guy left. And it's funny because I know my dad is friends with Pete Trainer, who designed these boxes. And I called him up when I needed to replace the speakers. I'm like, what did you use? And he said, well, they cost $5. And there was no difference between the guitar and bass speakers. They were just speakers.
What year was this?
This was, did I have that conversation?
Yeah.
I guess probably 2002.
Okay.
So, since our first record, there's been our first EP,
right?
No one's heard the original cabinets anymore.
Okay.
Then I had a creative amp tech said, I know your sound. Why don't you try using PA speakers instead of bass or guitar speakers? So this cabinet is a weird mix of original that was came with the box, of the closest approximation to the original that came with the box. I've got there's a couple PV guitar Delta speakers in here. This is an Eminence PA speaker. I think this might be as well. Yeah, I think that is. This is probably the same family as that. I have one of my other cabs that is actually, it's funny that this one is here, because I have so many, and my techs were packing up to go on tour in Europe, and they just grabbed this one, and not one of the ones that I've redone.
You're supposed to, right?
So same box over here, but these are all Eminence PA speakers, and
is that on purpose?
Yes, I fucking love them.
Okay.
Well, because I don't want it to just be low end. I find that when I'd use a bass cab, I wasn't getting the mid response that I wanted. I mean, you can say you'll still get the top, but I wasn't getting that. The mid is my sound. These are perfect, and it sounds incredible, and we redid all the wiring. I have another cab that's entirely these PV Delta Blues 10s. That's so nice with this, and that's the one that I would have liked to have on tour, but I have this here. I love them both, but it's sort of like that guitar speaker works really well with this amp sound, and the PA speaker works really well with this amp sound. But it's got to be the combination of the two. I tried to run both amps with cabs full of these Eminence, and they're super awesome, but it was missing a little something that this, for whatever stupid reason, has. So,
out of the pedal board, it goes into the Fender 62 reissue reverb, and then out of there goes into this Little Lab splitter, 1 in, 3 out. Plus, there's a couple outs in the back. There's a DI out for Robert out front, and there's an output out here that feeds the Leslie amp. And then also this is for the Fender Excelsior, which is an on-off pedal on the pedal board for him that he just kicks it on for solos. And then Princeton Deluxe outputs for there.
You also have a Princeton sitting over there?
Princeton and a Deluxe. Princeton's probably, I don't know, 63, 64. Deluxe is 54, 55. Yeah.
And then so it's the kind of the basic formula is cool old guitars, couple pedals in front and low watt amps, and just let the
same thing it's been for the past 50 years or 30 years with these guys. They go through stuff, but the bottom line is about tone. Nothing matters other than tone. So that's where guitars, amps, and it's all about what the sound.
It's a good mantra.
I mean, words to live by.
Yeah.
They're here 40 years later, you know what I mean?
All right, Zach, so we're on stage here. You got all these techs around.
Yeah.
You guys are getting ready for the show. This is Joan's main amp for how long?
She's been using this. She's recorded through this. It's a Music Man HD 130. And
this is the original one back from the 80s or late 70s.
She's recorded everything on this amp. I Love Rock and Roll, Hate Myself. This has been her #1 amp. Every time we do tours or anything like that, this comes out on the road. I have a backup for this amp, 130 watts. She likes JJ tubes in them.
And these just have a tube preamp and a solid state power amp, right?
Yeah. And then we have the, we made just a head version when we do flight 8s and one-offs and things like that, that we'll just fly this in a case, and we'll rent a Vox AC30, and she likes those blue Celestians in there, and we find that kind of gets close to the main one. The main one, we stripped out the speakers that came in them, and they're EV speakers, so just a lot more powerful, just heavy, really just that good mid-range that she likes, and it's really heavy too. I carried up 4 flights of stairs to have our amp guy, Harry Colby, take a look at it.
Now, these, they've got 2 channels, right? She must be going into the first channel because that's on 10 and the other one's on 2.
Yeah. She runs right through here. And basically, she just goes right into a tuner, and then it comes back out into this Ibanez tube screamer.
That's it, huh?
And right into the amp. A lot of, really all the Blackheart sound just comes from their hand. They're very plug and play, and it's just straight up rock and roll. They don't like a lot of effects, and kind of what you see is what you get, and that's the way Joan likes it.
She likes a TS9 Turbo, huh?
It's a Turbo, yeah.
How long have you been working with Joan?
Been with Joan since 2007.
And has it been pretty much the same?
She's really a creature of habit. The backup amp for the longest time used to be it was a Mesa Boogie Mark III. That thing just got destroyed on flight 8s, and we used to show up and people would actually have screws ready to help us put it back together because the airlines would just toss it and stuff. So they retired that to the recording farm, so we don't take that out anymore.
Now, do you think the main thing she likes about the Music Man amps is that they're sturdy because they have fewer tubes, or just the sound, or just all of it?
That kind of mid gain that she really likes. Doesn't like a lot of bass, a little bit of that high end, but really her sound, mixed with Dougie's sound, really just has a nice, wash of guitars. It blends really nice together.
We're talking about eye protection. I want to talk about ear protection and being loud, because that thing is loud. Yes. Is that why you dig it, or did you get it for free?
This I paid some cash for.
Currency.
Yeah, I used American cash to buy this from my friend Nick, who knows a lot more about amps than I do. Mike got his acoustic amp, and I still was using a 40-watt solid-state Hughes and Kettner. I don't know if you've ever been blessed to see such a wonderful model of amplifier, but it's great. It's about this big. It's covered in carpet, so it's really nice.
God.
So all those nice, clean things that you come into contact with on tour, they all stick to it.
A lot of dust bunnies.
Yeah, like dust and beer and like boogers and puke and stuff. So
Marissa, I call those memories.
they are though. Some of them are. And so I had that for 7 years, and then Mike got a big boy amp. So I needed a big boy amp, and for a while I had a custom Hustler, which is I bought it because it looked nice, and I thought it sounded good when I bought it. But then it was like such a nightmare. It's really heavy, and it didn't work most of the time, and it fell over a lot. Sounds like I'm describing myself.
Are you off balance often?
No, actually I have pretty good balance.
Okay, good.
I feel like I'm low to the ground, so I'm all right.
Your center of gravity is pretty.
I did one of those Wii Fit once, and it was like, your balance is like 98%. And I was like, I feel so validated. This is
Self-esteem
great.
boost.
Yeah. So Nick showed me this, and I played it, and I was like, I'm sold. This sounds great. And unlike the Custom Hustler, the sound I've been hearing that's been coming out of it for the many years since has still been pleasing to me. So I've just continued to have it. It has a recessed speaker.
That's what I was going to ask, because now you have that cover that's very ironic, because where the kids are watching this right now,
I know, but
it's on the internet.
Oh, yeah? Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying get off entirely, just like consider taking a little break.
Yeah, every now and then.
Jarrett made me this frame so I could put my new little grill on it. It was very nice of him.
I dig it.
And there are the speakers. I think a cat peed inside of this.
What gives you that feeling?
I don't know, because, if you get your head in, it's...
God.
Never mind.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, it's got a cat pee smell. But so I'm wondering if maybe this grill wasn't on for a while, maybe one of Nick's cat... Does Nick have cats? Maybe one of Nick's cats blessed it up.
Could have been a rando.
Could have been a drive-by.
Dumpster cat.
You never know. But yeah, so, and that's the story of the amp, really. I feel like a lot of people are always like, why are the speakers recessed? And I understand there's probably some kind of,
science,
physics, chemistry behind why they're recessed and how it amplifies the sound, maybe like more directional or whatever. But from what I've heard from a lot of other people who enjoy amplifiers is that Sun was just making stuff like this because it looks cool.
True story.
And it's, it is not, I don't poo-poo looking cool. I know I haven't quite gotten there yet, but there's nothing wrong with looking cool.
I think it's
and
a journey.
I thought it looked
I don't think
pretty
it's a
cool.
destination. I think it's a journey.
Absolutely, much like happiness.
Speaking of that, happiness, why, because I want to talk tone, why are you in the normal channel versus the bright? Or is that just a happenstance where you just put the input in?
I mean, I usually err on the side of whatever I think like is the most basic and then kind of expand from there. So I just plugged into normal and then fiddled around with the knobs for a while until I got something that I liked. I've never even tried the bright channel. I probably should.
Not if you dig what you're hearing.
But I tend to like kind of like mid-rangey tone and like sludgier stuff as opposed to like brittle guitars. In some circumstances, not in all. But yeah.
What about the reverb? Do you use reverb on this?
Nope, I don't use the reverb. I am not a fan of reverb pretty much at all. I can't really think of a scenario in which I have used it much. I think we've used very conservative amounts of it in recording, but I've never owned a reverb pedal, and I don't like it. I think it's also become kind of a little bit of a crutch and very ubiquitous, and in the guitar world here, just hearing it a lot at shows and stuff. I'm like, I don't want to hear like your guitar's in a well anymore. Even though there's nothing wrong with freshwater wells, I'm sure it's lovely to have one. I just like,
Just
maybe ever since I saw The Ring in 8th grade, I've been kind of like traumatized.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah. Mine was probably with Lassie in the well.
Well, that's another thing that we talk about a lot, Lassie. So, especially when we're talking about tone, we definitely make a lot of Lassie references.
What's wrong, boy?
It's someone's in the well. It's like put a top on it if people keep falling down.
Don't get me started.
I know.
So and then this thing is, I've got so many of these.
Selmer.
Yeah, I mean, I bought my first 3 Selmers in a job lot in like 1995, and someone sold me 3 of these heads for £90, 90 quid, like 120 bucks. And so I've been collecting them ever since. I've got about 10 of these.
What do you like about the Selmer?
It's just got this really beautiful British tone, loads of low end. You can jump these so you can blend all that in. They just sound, they got a beautiful sort of.
Do you mess with your settings while you're playing, or do you?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Okay. We put some we posted on Facebook asking what readers would like to know, and somebody was asking about your amp settings.
Yeah, I mean, I like a lot of low end. I mean, you see, there's not really an amp that I can get a sound that I want out of one amp. That's why I use all these. It's not for volume. It's just like this one will tend to be, if you heard this on its own, it'd be kind of quite woolly and low end. This one's really bright and reverby. This one gives it, this is a 1950s Magnatone 260,
That's awesome.
280 or 260, can't remember, 280.
So you're switching between songs?
No, they're all on at the same time.
All the time?
Yeah, because it's a blend of the tone.
That's awesome.
And then this Selmer here is a Selmer Zodiac, and that's really no, is it a Zodiac or a Thunderbird? Zodiac. It's a Zodiac. Sorry, I don't know my own gear. I've got a Thunderbird as well, and that's really, really clean, and it just gives it definition, and all together it kind of makes the sound.